The cowboy was left raising his brother's children until she walked in with warm bread and a smile. Jack Hardy stood on the wooden porch of the small, dusty outpost house and watched the twin sons of New Mesa sink behind the jagged cliffs. The wind carried the smell of dry soil, metal, and distant stardust. His boots were caked in rust-colored dirt, and his hands smelled faintly of oil and old leather. He scratched his stubbled chin and sighed, leaning against the railing. Life had changed fast, more than he could have imagined. 2 weeks ago, Jack had been a lone cowboy, tending to his small hoverhorse ranch on the outskirts of the asteroid colony. He spent his days fixing machines, riding the dusty plains of the colony, and occasionally delivering supplies to neighboring settlements. But a sudden mining accident in the belt had taken his brother away, leaving Jack with a responsibility he had never prepared for, raising his brother's 3 children. He looked down at the yard, where 10-year-old Ellie was trying to wrangle a small, clumsy hoverhorse, and 7-year-old Sam was chasing after a rolling metal sphere. 4-year-old Max sat under the porch, chewing on a piece of bread he had found, watching his older siblings. They were all lively, curious, and full of energy, but they had also been through so much. Jack felt a pang in his chest. He wasn't sure he knew how to be the parent they needed. "Jack, he's getting away," Ellie's voice cut through the quiet air. Jack turned and saw Sam tumbling after the sphere, which had rolled past the fence. With a long sigh, Jack pushed off the railing and jogged toward them. His hover boots barely lifted him, but he managed to reach Sam just as he tripped over a rock. Jack caught him, ruffling his hair. "You all right, little guy?" Jack asked, though he already knew Sam was tough enough to survive a tumble. Sam nodded, brushing dirt off his jumpsuit. "I just wanted the ball, Uncle Jack." Jack looked down at him and smiled, even though a little weary. That's what it had become, juggling work, life, and children who needed love and guidance at the same time. He hadn't signed up for this kind of adventure, but somehow it had landed on his doorstep. He loved his brother and he loved these kids, but he missed the simpler days of solitude under the twin suns. Evenings were the hardest. Jack had to cook, clean, and help the kids with their lessons. Their schoolwork came through a holopad, with lessons beamed in from Earth's teachers. Jack had little patience for technology, and his fingers always seemed clumsy on the touchscreen. "Why do they make this so hard?" he muttered one night as Max pressed a button upside down and nothing happened. Yet, despite the challenges, there were little victories. That night, they had managed to cook a simple meal from hydroponic vegetables grown in their small garden. Jack had boiled the water over a solar-powered heater while Ellie chopped greens carefully, proud to be doing real work. Sam stirred the pot with careful attention, and Max helped by setting plates. For the first time that evening, Jack felt a small sense of normalcy. After the meal, Jack carried Max to bed. Ellie helped Sam with his reading, and then they all gathered around a small hollow screen for a bedtime story. Jack read from an old cowboy novel that had belonged to his brother. The words felt heavier now, filled with memories of someone he had lost too soon. He tried to make his voice cheerful, but sometimes it cracked when he whispered, "Your father would be proud of you kids, and I'll try my best too." The stars outside the window seemed brighter than ever that night. Jack wondered about the vastness of space, the lonely planets, and the millions of people living light years away. He wondered how his brother had ended up in that mining shaft, and he prayed silently that somehow the children could grow strong enough to face this galaxy without him failing them. The next morning, Jack woke before sunrise, as he always did. Life on New Mesa required early starts, lessons, chores, animal care, and preparing supplies for the day. He made quick oatmeal for the kids, filling the small kitchen with the smell of warm grains and sweet fruit he had grown himself. Max, eyes half closed, grabbed a spoon and smiled at him. "Thanks, Uncle Jack." Ellie and Sam, though grumpy about waking early, eventually joined him at the table. Jack found himself teaching them practical lessons about life on New Mesa: how to check the hydroponic tanks, how to mend broken hover wheels, and how to recognize weather patterns in the red skies. The children absorbed everything like little sponges, asking questions about the old days of Earth and the distant planets they had never seen. Jack, who had spent most of his life relying on himself and his wits, discovered that teaching was not unlike taming a wild hover horse. Patience, understanding, and a little humor made the impossible seem possible. He smiled to himself, realizing that maybe he could do this after all. Mid-morning brought the challenge of errands. The outpost required trips to the supply station for food, parts, and other necessities. Jack bundled the kids into a small hover cart, strapping Max securely, and navigated the bumpy terrain. As they traveled, Jack couldn't help but notice how much the children had grown in just 2 weeks. Their curiosity, their laughter, their small acts of kindness toward one another. It was all a reminder of the strength of humanity, even in the harshest conditions. At the supply station, Jack handled negotiations with other settlers, bartering food and spare parts. He felt pride in the children as they watched him talk with confidence, reminding themselves that human ingenuity could overcome scarcity and difficulty. Even in a small, dusty outpost on the edge of the galaxy, life persisted because people adapted, learned, and supported one another. By late afternoon, they returned home tired but content. Jack set the children to tending small chores while he worked on repairs for the hover horses. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. It was quiet now, except for the occasional call of a distant skybird. Jack looked at the kids, working together to haul water, feed animals, and organize supplies. He felt a sense of pride swelling inside him. "They're strong," he thought. "They'll make it. We'll make it." Just as he finished, a soft hum echoed through the valley, the sound of a shuttle approaching. Jack squinted, shading his eyes. No one was supposed to be coming today. The shuttle landed gently, sending a small cloud of red dust into the air. The hatch opened and a figure stepped out. She carried a basket of warm bread and a smile that seemed to light up the dusty landscape. Jack blinked, momentarily caught off guard. The children ran toward her, drawn by the warmth of her presence and the smell of freshly baked bread. "Hello," she said softly. "I thought you might like something warm after your long day." Jack felt a strange relief, something he hadn't realized he needed. The loneliness, the endless responsibility, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders, all of it seemed lighter. For the first time since the accident, he felt hope. The woman's name was Leela, a culinary engineer traveling between colonies, sharing knowledge, meals, and kindness. She had a gentle way of explaining things, making complex tasks simple and fun. As she handed the bread to the children, Jack noticed how naturally the kids smiled and laughed around her. He realized slowly that maybe, just maybe, they had found an ally in this strange, wild galaxy. That evening, as the suns disappeared and the stars filled the sky, Jack stood again on the porch, watching the children eat bread and laugh with Leela. He took a deep breath and allowed himself a small smile. Life on New Mesa was still difficult, still uncertain, but humanity, in all its warmth, ingenuity, and resilience, had found a way to shine through. For the first time in a long time, Jack felt that maybe he wouldn't fail his brother's children after all. The next morning, the suns of New Mesa rose slowly over the jagged cliffs, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Jack Hardy was already awake, as usual, leaning against the doorway of his small outpost home. The children were still asleep, their small bodies curled beneath thin blankets that barely kept out the desert chill of early morning. Jack inhaled deeply, savoring the calm before the chaos of the day. It had been only a few hours since Leela had arrived with her basket of warm bread, yet her presence had already shifted the energy of the household. Even the children seemed lighter, happier, moving through their chores with enthusiasm that Jack hadn't seen in weeks. He was cautious, of course. Change was rarely simple, but something about her warmth, her steady confidence, made him trust that this was good, necessary even. "Uncle Jack," Ellie's voice cut through the quiet, accompanied by the soft thud of her hover boots against the floor. She bounced into the kitchen, a small hollow pad clutched in her hands. "Look, I set up the watering system for the garden. The plants didn't even spill a drop." Jack grinned, rubbing his forehead. "That's actually impressive, Ellie. You're learning faster than I ever did." Sam appeared next, tugging at Jack's sleeve. "Can we help Leela today? She said we could cook." Jack chuckled. "All right, team. Let's see what we can do before the suns get too high." By the time Leela emerged from her small pack, carrying another basket of bread and some strange metallic containers, the children had surrounded her, full of excitement and questions. "Good morning," she said warmly, kneeling to meet their eyes. "I brought some ingredients that will make breakfast fun and easy, and maybe we can learn a little about science while we cook." Ellie's eyes widened. "Science? Of course," Leela said with a gentle smile. "Cooking is all about science. Heat, water, timing. It's just like a small experiment every day." Jack watched as Leela spread out the ingredients on the small table. She moved with quiet efficiency, unpacking jars of grains, seeds, and other items he didn't recognize. The children immediately started asking questions, and she answered each one patiently, explaining why some grains needed water, why the heat had to be just right, and how each step would change the food. Jack was impressed. The way she worked made even the smallest chore feel like an adventure. For the first time, he felt like he could step back and not have to control everything. The children laughed, sprinkled grains over their bowls, and measured liquids into small containers, sometimes spilling, sometimes succeeding. Leela guided them, never scolding, always encouraging. When breakfast was finally ready, the smell of warm grains, nuts, and fruit filled the small home. Jack had never seen the kids eat so eagerly. Max reached for a piece of bread and grinned from ear to ear. "This is amazing," he exclaimed. "It's called learning by doing," Leela said, smiling at Jack. "You see, even small experiments teach big lessons, and it's fun." Jack nodded, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He had spent so long struggling on his own, believing that survival meant hard work and toughness. But watching Leela, he realized that life could be kind, too, fun, even if you approached it with the right attitude. After breakfast, Leela suggested they work on improving the small hydroponic garden in their backyard. The children jumped at the idea, eager to experiment. Leela handed each of them a small tool and explained how to adjust water flow, light, and nutrients for the plants. "Humans are amazing," Leela said softly, glancing at Jack. "We can make things grow where nothing existed before. We adapt, we create, we survive." Jack felt a lump in his throat. He had always known this in theory, but seeing it in practice, with his children thriving, Leela teaching, and the garden beginning to flourish, made it real. Hours passed in a blur of activity. Ellie carefully measured nutrients into the tanks. Sam monitored water levels, and Max mostly poured water everywhere, laughing as it splashed over his boots. Jack found himself laughing too, helping mop up spills and explaining to Max how to do it properly next time. Leela's guidance was patient and steady, but she allowed the children to make mistakes, understanding that learning was often messy. By midday, the garden looked healthier than it had in weeks. Plants that had been drooping in the weak sunlight now stood tall, vibrant, and green. The children cheered, proud of their hard work. "This is incredible," Jack said quietly to Leela. "I didn't think it could be done." Leela shrugged modestly. "It's not magic, just observation, patience, and a little curiosity. Humanity has always found ways to survive, even in the toughest places." Jack nodded, feeling a deep respect for her. Her presence was not just helpful, it was transformative. She made him realize that he didn't have to carry the weight of the world alone, that the children didn't need to grow up in isolation. Later that afternoon, Leela suggested they take the children on a small adventure into the cliffs surrounding New Mesa. She wanted them to learn about the natural environment, to understand the land, and to see firsthand how humans could adapt to it. Jack hesitated at first. Adventures were usually solitary, not family outings, but he eventually agreed. The cliffs were steep and red, bathed in the warm light of the twin suns. Hover horses trotted alongside them, carrying supplies and the youngest child, Max. Leela led the way, pointing out strange rock formations, small plants, and even the tracks of a desert fox that had passed through recently. Humans have always explored, Leela said as they walked. We adapt, we climb, we find food and water where no one else could. That's what makes us strong. The children asked endless questions, and Leela answered them with gentle patience. She explained how plants grew, how animals survived in harsh conditions, and how humans had learned to live in extreme places throughout history. Jack listened quietly, marveling at the way she connected knowledge with curiosity, showing the children that learning could be exciting and rewarding. By the time they returned home, the suns were low in the sky. The children were tired but exhilarated, their laughter echoing across the cliffs. Jack felt a sense of relief and joy he hadn't experienced in months. His brother's children were not just surviving, they were thriving. And for the first time, he felt like maybe he could keep them safe, happy, and educated in this lonely corner of the galaxy. That evening, they gathered again around a small table, eating the bread Leela had baked in the morning. Max leaned against Jack, his small head resting on Jack's arm. "Uncle Jack, I like Leela, she's fun." Jack nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, she is. I think she's here to help us and maybe teach us a few things along the way." Leela smiled at him, a quiet understanding passing between them. There was no rush, no pressure, only the slow building of trust and companionship. As night fell over New Mesa, Jack stepped outside to look at the stars. The twin suns had disappeared, leaving the sky filled with sparkling dots of light. He realized something important. In this vast, unforgiving galaxy, humans were capable of more than survival. They could adapt, innovate, teach, and care for one another. They could build life where there was none, bring joy where there was hardship, and find hope in the smallest moments, like a smile or a warm loaf of bread. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility, yes, but also a newfound sense of hope. Leela's arrival had changed everything, but it wasn't just her. It was the children, the land, the community of life they were slowly building together. Humans had always found a way to thrive, even in impossible circumstances. And Jack knew that, with the right people, the right mindset, and a little bit of courage, they could do it too. Tomorrow would bring challenges, lessons, and more work. But tonight, Jack allowed himself to simply breathe, to watch his brother's children laugh, and to see Leela's gentle guidance light the room. For the first time in a long time, Jack felt that life on New Mesa was not just about surviving, it was about thriving. And that realization, he knew, would guide him through every day to come. The morning air on New Mesa carried a hint of warmth, and the twin suns rose lazily over the jagged cliffs. Jack Hardy stood at the edge of his small outpost, rubbing his tired eyes. The past few days had been transformative, not just for him, but for the children. Ellie, Sam, and Max had begun to find joy in routines, in the garden, and in the small adventures with Leela. Jack still felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders, but for the first time he sensed a spark of hope. "Uncle Jack, come quick!" Ellie's voice called from the garden, bright and excited. Jack hurried over and saw the children clustered around a small, green plant that had just sprouted. Max jumped up and down, pointing at the tiny leaves, while Sam carefully adjusted the water flow to ensure it had enough nutrients. Leela knelt beside them, a gentle smile on her face. "Look at that," she said softly. "It's growing faster than I expected. You've done a wonderful job." Jack felt pride swell in his chest. The children were learning, adapting, and thriving under her guidance. He knelt down beside them, brushing a bit of dust from Ellie's sleeve. "This is good work, kids. You're turning this little garden into something strong, something that will last." Ellie beamed. "We want to make it the best garden on New Mesa," Leela laughed. "With that attitude, I'm sure you will." Jack realized something important that day. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't about getting through one day without trouble. It was about creating, improving, and building something meaningful. Leela's presence had turned their home into more than a house. It was becoming a place of growth, learning, and joy. By late morning, Leela suggested they explore a new project. She pulled out a set of small containers, filled with nutrient-rich soil, seeds, and tiny mechanical tools. "I thought we could try making vertical gardens," she explained. "It's a way to grow more food in less space." Humans have always found clever ways to solve problems like this. We adapt, we innovate, and we thrive. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Vertical gardens, isn't that a little fancy for us?" Leela shook her head. "Fancy or not, it works. And I want the kids to see that human creativity can solve problems, no matter where we are." Ellie, Sam, and Max crowded around her, eyes wide with excitement. Jack couldn't help but smile. Watching them work together, experimenting with soil, seeds, and small machinery, reminded him of the best parts of humanity: curiosity, teamwork, and determination. Mistakes were inevitable: spilled water, bent stems, and seeds that didn't sprout, but Leela guided them patiently, turning errors into lessons. "You see," she said as they adjusted a tilted planter, "every mistake teaches us something. Humans are strong not because we never fail, but because we keep trying." Jack nodded silently, reflecting on his own life. He had faced hardship before, had survived accidents and loss, yet he realized he had never truly appreciated the strength of persistence. Now, with the children learning, growing, and laughing, he understood the deeper meaning of resilience. By midday, the vertical gardens began to take shape. Greenery climbed upward, supported by small frames, and the children cheered at each new sprout. Jack watched from a distance, realizing how much had changed in just a short time. Leela had sparked a transformation, not just in the garden but in their home, their lives, and in his own heart. "Uncle Jack," Sam said suddenly, tugging at his sleeve, "can we make more?" "Bigger ones?" Jack smiled. "We'll see, little guy, but first let's finish what we started." The afternoon brought another adventure, repairing the hover horses. One of the younger animals had been limping slightly, and Jack knew they needed care. Leela insisted on helping, bringing small tools and demonstrating how to check the hooves, adjust the hover wheels, and ensure the animals were healthy. She encouraged the children to participate, turning the repair into a learning experience. "See," Leela said as Ellie carefully tightened a small screw, "humans have always taken care of animals, even on distant planets. It's part of our strength, our ability to nurture." Jack watched as the children worked together, following her instructions, asking questions, and laughing at minor mistakes. Even Max, who was easily distracted, managed to hold tools and pass them carefully to Ellie and Sam. By the end of the afternoon, the hover horse was moving smoothly, its limp gone, and the children were bursting with pride. Jack felt a sense of wonder. The small successes, the shared tasks, the laughter, it was all a reminder of human ingenuity. Life on New Mesa was harsh, the terrain difficult and resources limited. Yet, humans had a unique ability to adapt, to find solutions, and to bring joy into even the most challenging situations. As the suns began to dip toward the horizon, Jack noticed the children gathering around Leela once more. They had been experimenting with a small solar-powered device she had brought, using it to light the garden for evening growth. Ellie's eyes sparkled as she watched the device glow softly, illuminating the green leaves. "This is amazing," Ellie whispered. "We made this work, we really did." "Yes," Leela said softly, "and that's what humans do. We build, we create, and we make things happen. Even when it seems impossible, we find a way." Jack felt a lump in his throat. Watching his brother's children thrive, seeing Leela guide them, he realized how much potential humans carried, not just for survival, but for improvement, for growth, for hope. That night after dinner, Jack sat outside on the porch while the children and Leela cleaned up inside. The twin suns had disappeared, leaving the sky a deep violet, dotted with countless stars. He took a deep breath, feeling the quiet strength of the galaxy around him. Leela stepped out carrying a small tray with warm tea. She handed him a cup, her smile gentle in the starlight. "Long day," she said softly. Jack nodded. "It's different now. Better, I think. The kids are happy and I don't feel so alone." Leela sat beside him, handing him the tea. "You're never truly alone, Jack. Humans are strongest when we work together, when we share our lives, our knowledge, and our hearts. That's what makes us special. That's why we thrive." Jack looked at her, realizing the truth in her words. She wasn't just helping with chores or teaching lessons. She was showing him a way forward. She was helping him build a life, not just for himself, but for the children, for their future. The next morning, Jack awoke to the sound of Ellie and Sam already moving in the kitchen. Max was giggling nearby, trying to pour cereal into a bowl without spilling. Leela was at the counter, mixing ingredients for breakfast with careful precision. Jack smiled to himself, feeling the warmth of the household. Life on New Mesa was still difficult, but it had become brighter, fuller, and more hopeful. Each day brought small challenges, yes, but also opportunities for growth, learning, and joy. By mid-morning, Leela suggested another project, building a small observatory using recycled parts from old equipment scattered around the outpost. She explained that humans had always looked to the stars, not just for survival, but for understanding, inspiration, and connection. Ellie and Sam eagerly helped gather parts, while Max carried small tools in his little hands, pretending to be an engineer. Jack worked alongside them, marveling at the way Leela guided the project with patience and knowledge. Hours passed, and the observatory began to take shape. The children's laughter and excitement echoed across the desert plains, filling Jack with a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in years. Each small success, each spark of curiosity, reminded him of the power of human ingenuity. By evening, the observatory was ready. Leela guided the children as they peered through the makeshift telescope, pointing out distant planets, stars, and moons. Ellie's eyes widened in wonder. "We made this, we can see the stars." "Yes," Leela said, smiling. "And remember, humans have always reached for the stars. We explore, we discover, we dream, and we thrive." Jack watched them, feeling a quiet pride. The children were not just surviving, they were learning, creating, and growing. And with Leela's guidance, they were discovering that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt, innovate, and care for one another. As night fell, Jack stood on the porch once more, looking up at the stars. The twin suns were gone, leaving the sky full of countless points of light. He realized that life on New Mesa was not just about survival. It was about growth, hope, and the small sparks of human ingenuity that could change everything. He smiled, knowing that with Leela's help and the strength of the children, they could face any challenge. Humanity had always thrived in the harshest conditions, and here, on this distant planet, they would continue to shine. The morning sun rose slowly over New Mesa, casting long shadows across the jagged cliffs and dusty plains. Jack Hardy stirred awake in his small outpost home, rubbing his eyes. It had been a week since Leela's arrival, and the household had transformed. The children laughed more, helped more, and were genuinely excited to learn and explore. Jack, though still exhausted at the end of each day, felt a quiet pride that he hadn't known in years. "Uncle Jack," Look, Ellie's voice called from the kitchen. Jack entered to find the children gathered around Leela, who was carefully assembling a small, intricate device. What is it? Jack asked, curiosity piqued. Leela smiled. It's a weather sensor. If we can monitor temperature, wind, and dust storms, we can predict when a storm might hit. That way, we can protect the home, the garden, and the animals. Jack nodded slowly, impressed. That's smart, but can it handle the storms out here? Leela winked. That's why humans thrive, Jack. We invent, we adapt, and we find solutions before disaster arrives. The children's eyes sparkled as they helped attach small sensors and wires, following Leela's guidance carefully. Max dropped a wire twice, but instead of scolding, Leela encouraged him to try again. Sam carefully adjusted the sensor's angle while Ellie double-checked the connections. Jack watched silently, feeling awe at the small team working together, learning and creating. By mid-morning, the device was ready. Leela tested it, and the hollow display projected a map of New Mesa, showing current wind speeds and temperature readings. The children cheered as the device responded perfectly. "See," Leela said softly, "humans always find a way to solve problems. Even in the hardest conditions, we adapt and thrive." Jack smiled, taking a deep breath. The work they were doing together was not just practical, it was life-saving. Humanity's greatest strength, he realized, was its ingenuity, its curiosity, and its courage to act even in the face of uncertainty. But as they celebrated, a faint vibration ran through the ground. At first, Jack thought it was another miner's drill in the distance. But the vibration grew stronger, sharper, and then a low rumble rolled through the valley. "Earthquake?" Max asked, eyes wide. "No," Jack said slowly. "Not exactly. Something else, something moving above us." Leela's hollow device beeped urgently. The reading spiked. "Jack, there's an incoming asteroid storm," she said, pointing to the map. Tiny red dots moved rapidly across the screen. "It's close. We have only a few hours to prepare." Jack's chest tightened. He had faced challenges before, but this was different. A storm like this could destroy the garden, the house, and even the hover horses. The children looked frightened. Ellie clung to Jack's arm, Sam held Max, and Max stared wide-eyed. "All right," Jack said, taking a deep breath. "We're not panicking. Leela, what's the plan?" Leela quickly assessed the situation. "We need to protect the house first, secure the garden, and make sure the animals are safe. Then we can set up emergency systems for water and food. Humans have faced worse, Jack. We'll do it together." Jack nodded. "Kids, listen carefully. We stick together, follow instructions, and stay calm. We've done hard things before, and we'll do this too." They sprang into action. Leela led the children in creating protective barriers for the garden, using old planks, recycled metal sheets, and nets from the outpost storage. Ellie and Sam worked diligently, stacking materials and securing them, while Max carried small tools under supervision. Jack secured the hover horses, attaching protective shields to their hooves and checking their harnesses. The hours passed in a blur of activity. Dust began to pick up across the plains, swirling around their small home. The wind howled, and Jack felt the tension rise, but Leela's calm guidance kept them moving. "Remember," she said, "humans survive by working together. Ingenuity and teamwork are our greatest tools." Jack couldn't help but admire her. Even under pressure, she remained patient, organized, and encouraging. She was showing him, and the children, that fear could be met with action, and that every challenge had a solution if approached with intelligence and cooperation. As the first chunks of the asteroid storm appeared on the horizon, Jack activated the small shield generator they had salvaged from an old mining ship. Leela helped him calibrate it, adjusting energy flow to cover the house, garden, and hover horses. The device hummed to life, creating a shimmering protective field around the property. Ellie's eyes widened. "It's working." "Yes," Leela said softly. "This is what humans do. We innovate, we adapt, and we protect what we love." The storm hit New Mesa with a roar. Dust swirled, small rocks bounced against the shield, and the wind tried to tear through their barriers. Inside the house, Jack and Leela guided the children, keeping them calm. Max trembled slightly, clinging to Jack's arm. "It's all right, Max," Jack said, stroking his hair. "We've prepared, we're safe." Leela's voice joined his. "Yes, humans can survive harsh conditions. We are clever, strong, and creative. The storm cannot break us." Hours passed. The storm raged, but the shield held. The garden was battered, but the vertical gardens remained upright. The hover horses huddled safely inside their enclosures. Every small precaution, every ounce of ingenuity had paid off. When the storm finally subsided, New Mesa was quiet again. The twin suns peeked through clouds of dust and debris, casting a soft light across the battered landscape. Jack stepped outside, surveying the scene. There was damage, yes, but they had survived. The garden was bruised but not destroyed. The hover horses were unharmed. And most importantly, the children were safe. Ellie ran to him holding a small, bent plant. "It survived," she exclaimed. "Yes," Jack said, ruffling her hair. "It did, and so did we." Leela joined them, smiling. "This is what humanity does, Jack. We face danger, we adapt, we solve problems, and we protect each other. We thrive even when the odds are against us." Jack looked at her, a deep sense of gratitude swelling in his chest. She had not only guided the children, but had also reminded him of the essence of humanity: courage, ingenuity, compassion, and resilience. That evening, after the last repairs were made and the children were fed, Jack sat on the porch, looking at the stars above. The storm had passed, leaving the sky clear and the twin suns set peacefully behind the cliffs. Leela joined him, carrying a small tray with warm bread and tea. "You did well today," she said softly. Jack shook his head. "We all did. The kids, you, me, everyone. This is what matters. Humans can do incredible things when we work together." Leela smiled. "Exactly. Humanity has survived storms, disasters, and challenges for millennia. It's not just strength or courage. It's our ability to adapt, to think, to care, and to act." Jack took a deep breath, feeling a quiet sense of pride and hope. The asteroid storm had tested them, but it had also shown him the power of teamwork, human ingenuity, and resilience. The children, exhausted but happy, joined them on the porch. Max leaned against Jack, Sam showed off a small, repaired tool, and Ellie held a sprouting plant as a symbol of survival. Jack looked at them, then at Leela. "We've done something amazing here. Not just surviving, but thriving. That's humanity, isn't it?" "Yes," Leela said softly, looking at the children with warmth. "That's exactly what it is. And now, Jack, you see it too." For the first time since his brother's death, Jack felt truly hopeful. Humanity, curious, inventive, and compassionate, had guided them through the storm. And as they sat together under the star-filled sky, he knew that whatever challenges awaited on New Mesa, they could face them. Together. The suns of New Mesa rose over the jagged cliffs with a soft glow, casting long shadows across Jack Hardy's outpost. The morning air smelled faintly of dust, fresh bread, and the garden's growing plants. It was a calm, quiet morning, the kind of day where hope could feel real. Jack stepped outside, stretching his arms, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in months. Ellie, Sam, and Max were already awake, bustling with excitement. The events of the past few days had transformed them. The garden was thriving, the hover horses were healthy, and even the small observatory they had built with Leela was complete. The children were not just surviving, they were learning, growing, and enjoying life. "Good morning, Uncle Jack," Ellie called, waving a small watering tool. "Morning, Ellie," Jack said with a smile, ruffling her hair. "Looks like you're ready for another adventure." "Of course," Sam said, holding Max's hand. "We're going to check the garden first." Jack laughed softly and followed them. Leela was already at the garden, tending to the vertical plants that had grown taller than he could remember. She looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Jack. The children are eager as always. Shall we start the day?" Jack nodded. Absolutely. What do you have in mind? Leela gestured toward the garden. We can expand it today, teach the children some advanced techniques for growing plants efficiently. They're ready. Humans thrive when we learn, adapt, and improve. Jack watched as the children eagerly followed Leela's instructions. Ellie carefully added nutrient water to the taller plants. Sam adjusted small support beams for the vines, and Max carried tiny tools with determination. Jack realized as he observed them that Leela had done more than teach. They were discovering the power of curiosity, cooperation, and ingenuity. By mid-morning, the garden had doubled in size. Rows of vegetables and grains now climbed the vertical frames, and the small hydroponic tanks glimmered in the sunlight. The children cheered at the sight, proud of their hard work. "You see, Jack," Leela said softly, "humans have always built, created, and improved. Even in the harshest places, we make life flourish." Jack smiled. "You're right, I see it now. The children, we've all grown." After lunch, Leela suggested a new activity. "I thought it would be fun to bake bread together, not just for eating but for learning. Humans have always shared meals as a way to connect, to care, and to celebrate. And today I want the children to feel that too." Ellie's eyes lit up. "Bread? Really? Can I mix it?" "Of course," Leela said, handing her a small wooden spoon. "And Sam, you can knead. Max, you can sprinkle some seeds on top." Jack watched as the children worked together, laughing and learning. The small kitchen was filled with the smell of warm dough, the sound of tiny hands kneading, and the quiet hum of teamwork. Even Jack found himself helping, marveling at how Leela had transformed the act of cooking into a lesson in creativity, patience, and joy. When the bread was finally ready, steaming and golden, they sat together at the small table. Max took the first bite, his eyes widening in delight. "This is amazing," he said. Ellie nodded enthusiastically. "It's the best bread ever." Jack smiled, feeling warmth in his chest. "It's more than bread," he said softly. "It's teamwork, learning, and care. And it's human ingenuity at its best." As they enjoyed the meal, Jack noticed something else. The children's laughter and excitement were not just about the bread or the garden. It was about connection, about love, about the small joys that made life worth living. And for the first time, Jack realized that survival alone was not enough. Humanity thrived when people cared for each other, shared knowledge, and built something meaningful together. After breakfast, Leela suggested a walk to the cliffs overlooking the valley. The children eagerly followed, excited to explore and learn. Jack led the way, feeling a quiet pride as he watched them. "This is where humans have always explored," Leela said, pointing to the horizon. "We look beyond our homes, our settlements, to understand the universe. Exploration teaches us, inspires us, and connects us to something greater, and it all starts with curiosity and courage." Ellie ran ahead, peering over a cliff and pointing at distant rock formations. Sam followed, carefully balancing on the edge, while Max held Jack's hand, eyes wide with wonder. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the vastness of the desert and the sky above. For all its harshness, New Mesa was alive. And humans, with their creativity, determination, and care, could make life flourish anywhere. Leela handed the children small notebooks and encouraged them to draw, write, and observe. Ellie sketched plants and rocks, Sam measured distances, and Max made small scribbles, giggling as he added imaginative stars. Jack watched them, marveling at the way humans could combine curiosity, learning, and imagination to grow stronger, wiser, and happier. By afternoon, they returned home, tired but elated. The garden sparkled in the sun, the hover horses rested in their enclosures, and the observatory gleamed atop a small rise. Jack felt a deep sense of pride. The home they had built together was more than just shelter. It was a place of learning, growth, and hope. As the suns began to set, Jack and Leela sat on the porch, watching the children play nearby. Ellie and Sam laughed as they raced hover horses across the yard, while Max rolled a small metal ball along the dusty ground. The air smelled of warm bread, dust, and growing plants, a perfect blend of home. "You've changed everything, Leela," Jack said quietly. "I didn't know this could feel so good," Leela smiled. "You did the hard part, Jack. You took responsibility, loved these children, and built a home. I just helped guide them, and that's what humans do. We thrive together and we make life better for each other." Jack nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I see that now. Humanity, it's not just surviving. It's building, caring, teaching, learning, making life worth living." The children ran over, breathless and laughing. "Uncle Jack, Leela, look what we found." Ellie held up a small plant that had survived the storm, its leaves shining green in the twilight. "Yes," Sam exclaimed. "It's alive, we saved it." Max held his hands up, showing tiny seeds he had planted in the soil. "They'll grow." Jack smiled, feeling a profound sense of hope. "We did this together, all of us. Humans are amazing when we work together and care for each other." Leela handed Jack a small piece of warm bread. "For all your hard work," she said softly, "and for the future." Jack took a bite, savoring the taste, and felt a warmth that went beyond the food. It was the warmth of family, of friendship, of community, and of humanity itself. He looked at the children, at Leela, and at the home they had built together, and he knew that life on New Mesa was no longer just about surviving. It was about thriving. That evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Jack stood on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. The children sat around a small fire, roasting bread and laughing, while Leela tended to the garden's lights, ensuring the plants would continue to grow through the night. Jack took a deep breath. Life was still challenging. New Mesa was still harsh. But with the strength of humans, their creativity, and their capacity for love and care, anything seemed possible. "Tomorrow," Jack said softly to himself, "we'll grow more, learn more, and keep thriving. That's what humans do." Leela joined him on the porch, her smile warm in the soft starlight. "Yes, Jack. And together, you and the children will show the best of what humanity can be. Strong, creative, caring, unstoppable." Jack nodded, watching the children laugh and play, the garden shining softly in the night and the stars above stretching infinitely. Humanity, he realized, was not just surviving in the galaxy, it was shining. And here on New Mesa, they had built more than a home. They had built hope, courage, and a future worth living. He turned to Leela, the warm glow of the fire reflecting in her eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked. "For showing me, showing all of us, what humans can truly be." She smiled, handing him another piece of bread. "For reminding you, humanity shines brightest when we care, create, and thrive together." Jack took the bread, glanced at the children laughing around the fire, and finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of peace and joy. The future was uncertain, yes, but for the first time, he knew they could face it together. And that was enough. The night on New Mesa was quiet, the twin moons casting silver light across the desert. The garden glowed softly under the observatory lights, the hover horses rested, and the children slept peacefully inside their home. Jack and Leela sat on the porch, watching the stars, feeling the quiet strength of humanity all around them. Humanity had survived storms, harsh planets, and isolation. But more than survival, they had thrived, built life, love, and hope. And here on this small outpost in the galaxy, that truth was clear, shining brighter than any star above. And with that thought, Jack smiled, feeling warm, content, and ready for whatever tomorrow would bring.